Edmund Kemper was a very well-known serial killer in late 1972 to early 1973. He murdered a total of 10 people, starting with his grandparents at 15 and finishing with his mother before eventually turning himself in. He would kill his victims by picking up hitchhikers around the college campus his mother worked at and taking them to a isolated location and either shooting or stabbing them. During his killings, he was very close with the local police officers and would often hang out with them in the bar they frequented. He was extremely intelligent, with a recorded IQ of about 140. This is how he was able to elude police detection while hanging out with them and discussing the details of the case. After turning himself in, he was sentenced to life in prison, where he began to conduct interviews with the FBI. These interviews were extremely useful to authorities and helped them gain insight into the behavior and characteristics of serial killers. It seems strange that a criminal would then turn around and help authorities catch another criminal while gaining nothing, which is essentially what was happening here. But I propose that Kemper helped the police due to his narcissism, and he wanted to feed into that and kind of elevate himself, and his extreme desire to feel important and just better than the police. He had a very severe superiority complex. Kemper says his reason for killing was because his mom severely abused him throughout his childhood. She was an alcoholic who routinely locked him in the basement and belittled him. His mother worked closely with co-eds at the college she worked at, meaning that Kemper had easy access to these co-eds as well. He even had a campus sticker on his car, making him seem more trustworthy. And cause when the killings, like the news of the killings first started to get out, the police put out a statement saying to not get in a car unless it had a campus sticker on it. So obviously people were going to see the campus sticker on Kemper's car and just assume that he was trustworthy. And the main reason he killed co-eds was because his mother worked so closely with them and had such a bond with them that he wanted to destroy that because it was something his mother cherished. And growing up, she would never give him any praise or affection, so he wanted to destroy something that she cherished, essentially killing the actual object of her affection. The FBI began a series of interviews of violent repeat offenders, or mainly serial killers, in the 70s, with serial killers such as David Berkowitz, Monty Rissell, Richard Speck, and, of course, Edmund Kemper. All of these helped the FBI gain a better understanding of why serial killers kill and certain characteristics and backgrounds that they all share. This in turn helped the FBI identify and catch future serial killers. Edmund Kemper was a particularly good candidate for interviews. As mentioned previously, he is extremely intelligent. Just from watching his interviews, you can tell the way he speaks. He's very well-spoken, very articulate, and when asked a question, he can explain it in great detail and will often just kind of answer the question and then just go off talking for 5 minutes and just kind of tell them more than they even asked for. He's also very self-aware, meaning that he can explain his motives for killing and what he believes led him to a serial killer. So, for example, I mentioned that he believes that his mom is the reason he started killing, and he knows why he killed the co-eds, what that meant to him, and just how it all kind of led to him becoming a serial killer. And this, of course, provides significant insight into the minds and the making of a serial killer. John Douglas and Robert Ressler were the main two that interviewed Kemper, and a book and a TV show was actually made about this series of interviews they conducted because they just became so popular and well known. Kemper did not talk to the police because he actually wanted to help them catch serial killers, and definitely not because he was reformed. He even said that the only reason he turned himself in is because he knew if he was out, he wouldn't stop killing. So it wasn't like he was just suddenly one day fixed and he wanted to then help catch other criminals like him. He was more than happy to begin killing again. It's very likely that he only agreed to the interviews to feed into his narcissism and to make himself feel important. By talking to the police, Kemper most likely felt that he had more knowledge than them and that they needed him, and he liked this superiority it gave him because he craved validation and attention due to the way his mother deprived him of this and belittled him. And by talking to the police in these interviews, he sort of thinks, oh, I have this knowledge and insight that they can't have without me, so they need me, which very much so fed into his ego. It is also possible that he wanted to share his story with the interviewers because he wanted to explain his motivations and not have people have empathy with him or have them think or understand why he did it, but more in a way that he wanted people to know it's not impossible that he became a serial killer, that he became that person. He wants people to hear about his past, hear about his mother and how she was treated and how he could never have a successful social relationship with a woman. And he wanted them to hear that and realize, oh, it's understandable that he became a serial killer. You know, it's not that they sympathize with him, but it's just that he wants that kind of validation, saying, like, he's not a bad person, he's not crazy, he was just driven to his breaking point and he needed a form of retribution. And it's also very possible that he just wanted to pass the time while in prison. He mentions often how he would have preferred the death penalty instead of getting life in prison, and even tried to kill himself during his trial. He's very intelligent and was likely not finding any form of stimulation in prison, so participating in these interviews was a good way for him to have some form of mental stimulus, because in the interviews it's very apparent, like, he loves talking to them, loves answering the questions, and he just doesn't get that kind of stimulation in prison. And so it's possible that he just honestly enjoys talking to these interviewers. And furthermore, on the narcissism part and the superiority complex, in one of the interviews, he was with a lady, that was a previous interview. In the interview, he was talking to the people about another interview he had done, in which he spent 2 hours talking to the lady, and she didn't start the video recorder. And he even says, like, oh, I kept telling her that she needed to check it, she needed to start it, and she just kept saying, like, oh, I'm sure it's fine, it's on. And the girl ended up being wrong, and it was off the whole time. And just the way that he talks about it, he's kind of laughing about it and laughing at her. So it was very clear that he very much so enjoyed just knowing that in that second he was smarter than her, and still wants to talk about it and let people know how much smarter he is than other people. And another example of this is when he tried to kill himself during trial, they took him to the hospital, and the doctor gave him a medicine that he claims to have made him crazy, but Kemper obviously has no medical experience, but he's just critiquing this professional over and over about the medicine he gave him, and he even said that he's talked to other doctors and like the prison doctor and such and asked them their opinions on it. So it's clear that even if he has absolutely no expertise in an area, he's going to think that he's better. So just the police needing him for something is very playing into that ego. These interviews were extremely helpful to the FBI because talking to serial killers allows them to analyze their behavior patterns and certain things they find in their background or personality in order to learn about the warning signs and things that could potentially lead to a future serial killer. One of the main discoveries that came from these interviews was the further confirmation of the McDonald triad. Now, the McDonald triad was first proposed in 1963, and it is essentially just the three things are animal cruelty while younger, bedwetting past the age of 5, and an obsession with fire setting. And like I said, the McDonald triad wasn't widely accepted at first. It was kind of this could be right, but there was no real proof that it was ever an actual thing that police should pay attention to. But after these series of interviews with serial killers, John Douglas and Robert Ressler were able to kind of lead to the further widespread confirmation of the triad. And Kemper had an extensive past of animal cruelty, so they were able to get that from him, and then from other serial killers they were able to continue confirming it. But the theory basically states that If any of those two things in the triad, or if all three things are present in an individual, there's a very strong link to future violent and often serial offenses. And this theory has helped the FBI identify serial killers or other violent offenders by building a profile and identifying suspects that fit that profile. And this triad can also help caregivers identify these things in children, such as parents, therapists, teachers. If they start to notice these trends that a child is doing and they keep doing it, and then like two or more are present, they can kind of pull the kid aside and try to get them help to lead to the prevention of future serial offenders. And the wide acceptance of this was really made possible by, of course, the other serial killers, but Kemper was just a very substantial and significant help in this confirmation.